Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Fair coming on, 4 days of horse track analysis, and I'm brand new.
Unbelievable.
Well, little ego thing, I got to be pretty good at it, you
That's
know.
awesome.
And so then, and I met the darndest people. You ever want to meet colorful people? Some of these old jockeys, these old horse trainers and owners, and these racing stewards would sit upstairs. You'd be right with them, and they would have more risk because in between races, unless you got a call or something where there's been a fault, they got nothing to do. So they're talking, and I heard more. I wish I could have written a book about some of the things some of these guys
Those
have been
stories,
through.
I can only imagine.
So so then I get a call about 2 years later from, well, it doesn't matter, to go over and do the races at Kalispell, Montana. You were up there in the Flying Valley.
Kalispell, yeah.
So, okay. I found out later the manager of that fair, he came over to listen to me before he hired me over there. He says, I heard you, I've been over there.
Wow.
So I started doing Shelby, Kalispell. Then they wanted me to do one out of Hamilton, Montana. So I was doing about 3 different tracks in the summer. Missoula wanted me to. I went there one time, but I couldn't schedule it in. So anyway, Great Falls, which was about 80 miles from us, they did quite a race meet during the summer. They had about 33 days of racing.
Wow.
Well, there's a guy comes up in the booth there while I'm at the fair, and he's getting some lemonade or something, and somebody says to him, his name was Dick Forrester. I didn't realize who he was, but he was the manager of the track down there. And somebody up there, one of the stewards says, Dick, do you know Bob Norris? And his back is to me, and I'm looking the other way, and he says, no, but he's going to be our next announcer in Great Falls, he says. So I turned around. He says, would you go to work for us? I says, yeah. So now I signed a station on, do my production, drive 80 miles, do Wednesday night races, and then also Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Was it Friday night? Yeah, I think 4 days a week I was doing races down there.
Wow.
Plus on the air. But it's intense, and I had to have fun with it, with me. One of the stories that came out, there was a gal that used to write a magazine article about racing, and I didn't realize she'd caught up on this. She came and did a story on me, and it was kind of fun. She remembers me doing a story where we had a futurity. I don't know if you've been around the rank. You got futurity is just 2-year-old horses, and now a lot of them are knotheads. They call them because they haven't. Of course, they got to be trained before the stewards will let them run even, because they got to learn to get in the gate and stand there. Well, we had a futurity. This was at Great Falls, I remember. And I'd say, the horses are loading, so-and-so's in, 7 of them is loaded now, waiting on 6, and whatever. So we got them and said, forget what word they use now, but they're ready, they're in the gates. And we wait, and then one of them would rear up, and the jockey'd have to get off and back. And it went on and on. And I'm sitting there waiting. And I says, some of these horses are going to be too old to run in this before we get it out.
No, graduated from the futurity.
I had to do it. So they got...
Well,
and then,
there's a running theme here. I don't know if you're getting this, but there's a running theme here. You are always on stage.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
You are literally, your entire life story is you on stage.
Yeah.
So like we started out today talking about how you're always hearing, people are always listening to you and potentially listening to you to hire you, right? And literally everything we've talked about has been, well, so-and-so heard me here, and so-and-so heard me there, and they heard me here, and this happened, and right? Yeah. It's like all of a sudden, it's just, if you look at sort of the running theme of your life, it's that you've been on stage your entire life.
I've tried to stay humble about it. I became a great believer later on in life. I hadn't always lived for the Lord, but I had a change in my life. Went through a divorce. It was, good time Bob come and party, and it led into some lonely times. Yeah. So I remarried, and I'm going to talk. One thing I've jotted down here, and I want to talk about what went on. One day, our 4 towers there, people ever going up north to Shelby, you're headed on the interstate, you'll see the interstate comes down straight like this, and then it takes a curve and goes out and around, because our 4 towers are sitting there. Mm-hmm. And your towers, when you build those, you have a ground system that's all copper wire that runs out a long ways. Okay. You have to have this for the ground. Well, the highway department, when they wanted to put in the interstate 4-lane through there, they came through and they wanted to, what they said they would do is they'd have us roll up those ground wires. They could go through and then put dirt back on. And our owner of our station says, well, if you can guarantee us when we put all these wires back out again that we could still get our signal exactly where it's got to be, we'll let you do it. Well, they looked that over and they had no way of guaranteeing that. So instead of cutting straight through, you'll see I-15 comes this way. And I said, it's easier to go around you guys.
To make the job.
Yeah, just a little bit of information. Anyway, my wife and I are going south one day on the I-15, and I'm looking over at our towers. She says, what are you looking at? I says, well, Mark, who was the son of our manager, Mark Black, was in college then, but he was home for the summer. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that Jerry had hired Mark to paint the towers. Well, you normally bring in professionals, but if it's to save $1, sure, you would.
There we go.
So I'm looking up there, I don't see him. She says, doing what? I says, paint the tower. She says, I'd like to do that. My wife, I'd been in the business a lot of years. I climbed up a little ways on a tower once. That's as far as she wanted to paint the towers.
Unbelievable.
So I said, well, go tell. She tells Jerry that. Jerry says, you what? What had happened, Mark? I said to Jerry, I said, what happened to Mark? I thought he was painting the tower. Says he got up to the top, and you paint them orange, that orange and white. Yeah. And you have to take this length of the tower, you divide it into 7 portions. You have like ours was about 30 feet of this color and then 30 feet of that.
Yeah, they were striped.
So you had on your belt, we had a gallon of orange paint hanging on this side, you had white paint hanging on this side, and we used these absorbent type mittens that you wash a car with. You dip them in the paint and
That's what I used to do.
Yeah.
On the farm in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
My granddad had all these iron tube fencing.
Oh yeah.
And gates and all that, and we'd have to paint them every few years, because they get rusty and all that.
Sure.
So we would paint them with this silver paint. It was an anti-rust type paint.
Yeah.
And we used those bits to do that. Wow. Yeah, I've done that. Yeah. I used to paint sheds that way for him too.
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, I mentioned to Black, my manager, later on. He says, we ever do that again, we're going to lay him down and paint him.
Yeah. So did she end up? So she ended up painting him.
Well, Mark had gone up and he looked and he just threw the thing down and climbed back off and says, you're crazy. I'm not doing that.
Oh.
So here's
too far
my
up? Huh? Was it too far up?
They're 200 feet.
But was it too far up for Mark?
I don't know what it was.
Like the whole thing was too much work?
Yeah, too high or didn't like the height. I'm not sure exactly what it was.
So did she traipse up those towers?
Then I ended up helping her, but I got pictures of her. Then we at that time had not the best communicator, but we did have portable radios. They were big old things like so. I'd send one of those with her, and I'd switch to my wife out on I-15 for a traffic report. Well, let's switch out to Lois up there on number 3. People would drive by and honk.
Right.
Yeah. When we meet people later in life, we moved to Yuma, Arizona, retired, they know about us, and they'd say, Lois, I remember when you were painting those towers.
Oh my God, that was so funny.
Her dad was just about went out of his mind. So not only that did she go up and paint them, but we'd have, once in a while we'd have a light out, you know, you got beacons on top.
Sure.
And those beacons are about that big around. Yeah. And they're on hinges, and you have to unhook them, lay them back, and then take the bulbs out. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I did join her later, and I climbed them too, both of us. We kind of got in shape after a while doing it. But anyway, when you're going up, and neither one of us would use a strap, or I say going up. It's too much work, and we just climbed the darn thing. Mm-hmm. But we both learned quickly, when you're doing that, don't look up, because clouds are moving and you think you're going right over on your back. Just look straight out like this, and don't. You kind of get used to it after a while. Plus, their legs got in shape. But anyway, here's my crazy wife, because we were going to host a cruise. We didn't have any travel agencies, so we would put together on the air cruises, the Caribbean, join us. Of course, we would make, after every 5th one you sold, you got a free one. Yeah. So we could pay for ours. So Lois and I hosted about 3 cruises, plus trips to Hawaii. I didn't make a lot of money, didn't matter, but the spiffs were something else. Yeah, but yeah, so thanks to my wife and painting towers. So I tell you, it's that crazy and wild. But
I love the thing about the traffic reports.
Yeah, it's sure. Yeah, and when you got a green truck moving, yeah, I want to be big time. Right. Switch out to our eye in the sky.
Yeah, eye in the sky. Southbound 15. She's got a paint bucket on her butt, right? Oh my gosh, that is so funny. I love that.
That's crazy.
That's really cool.
Let me switch back to Helena, Montana, my TV thing.
Okay.
I started that and I forgot it.
There we go.
Okay. So they were going to break me into running the controls in the control room, because we only use one man in there. You had to control the sound. You got all these different mics, and when you get guests, you go around, you put little lapel mics on people, and then they'll bring you in a diagram that you're on A6 or whatever. So I got this whole big panel of microphones and switches and potentiometers, pots on them. Handle that, plus the video you had to control, because if you had a couple of buttons here, if you got too much light, it would buzz your set at home. We had to do that manually. Every time the camera moved, you adjusted that, checked the sound. You were directing that cameraman. Okay, you're trying to do all these things
all at the same time,
and it would take you actually a breaking period, about a week, to learn all this stuff, because you got all this. So my brother-in-law was a good engineer, and Dick had worked. He'd worked half the night on the transmitter to get a better picture. You know, he worked real hard. Well, we had a manager that halfway was an engineer, but not technically as good as he should be. Well, Dick, my brother-in-law, he had quite a temper, but the manager, Bruce, is sitting out in the front office and watching what we called our panic period. Panic period is when everything's live for a half hour. You got sports, you got news, you got guests. So it's everything very intense, and it takes a lot of work. So Dick says, well, come in. And so I brought a chair in, I sat alongside of Dick, and he hadn't had time to explain much of anything to me. And about that time, the manager, we're doing a live show, manager Bruce comes into the control room. Here's Dick sitting there doing this. This manager reaches right over Dick, and he starts grabbing controls and looking at meters. And Dick had worked on that, and he's telling Dick how to adjust that picture. Dick takes his headset, and his brother Bob is on camera, takes that headset, throws it on the thing, grabs that manager, by the neck, and he's got him lifted off the floor. He says, "You don't ever touch those controls when I'm doing it." And Bruce says, "Dick, you're choking me." He says, "You darn right I am." Boom, sets him down, out the door he goes.
Wow.
I'm sitting in this, that's my break into television.
You're now sitting there by yourself.
Yeah.
And you're now in control of that control panel.
Yeah. My brother,
Wow.
his brother,
Wow.
Bob, hears the rocket through the glass even, because we got a big glass studio. We're looking out into the production area. Looks at me and points to my head, put the headset on, because we could talk to our cameraman. He says, "What's going on?" He has to be quiet. I says, "Dick's killing Bruce."
Unbelievable.
This brother Bob, he told that story the rest of his life of this. So Bob, he says, "Okay, I'm gonna leave my camera, just don't worry about it." He comes into the control room, breaks it up. Dick, he grabs his license off the wall, and he's out of there.
Wow.
And Bob looks at me, he says, "You think you could run that thing?" And I watched over their shoulder a little bit of what they do. I said, "Well, I'll give it a try." So I got us through that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that
That's
was
like
my
baptism.
break in.
That's like baptism by fire, you know?
That was my break into television. Oh yeah,
Unbelievable.
and my break into my first commercial on television was this. That's before I even got into the television side. I wandered one day into the studio. Your commercials were live.
Yeah.
Well, one of our sales guys was a real character. He had Buckley Food Stores as a sponsor, and he would come in when he knew there was a commercial. He'd come in and do the commercial.
Yeah.
Well, so here stacked was oranges and apples and all kinds of stuff, and I just happened to walk in there, and all of a sudden, ironically, the guy that was working the TV side, I had met at Brown Institute back in Minneapolis. He ends up off the TV station in the element.
Wow.
Big John, we call it. He pushes the PA button, He says, "Bob, so-and-so isn't here to do that commercial." He says, "Can you do that Buckley commercial?" So one of the camera guys, he grabbed the mic and slapped it around me. And all I know is I got to do a 1-minute spot live about this.
And all you're doing is wandering through
I
the
just
studio.
wandered through. I'm a radio guy.
Right.
And I got it. Next thing I turn around and boom, I'm on camera. And of course, to me, TV was so boring.
Yeah.
So I'm taking these, I'm throwing them in there. Hey, this week, these oranges are they were higher up, but we just lowered them. I'm having fun with this thing.
Right. The price just came down, baby.
And we got all done with it. This guy's in the control room. What was that?
Yeah.
That's your commercial you wanted.
What in the world ever possessed you, right?
Yeah. So.
Well, you gotta have fun with it.
I don't know what I think. So, back in those days, I don't know if you remember watching the weather guys. We had a big weather board that had all the cities in Montana, Great Falls, Bozeman, Missoula, Kalispell. So, it always looked pretty clever. You'd go around and you'd say, in Kalispell right now it's 37 degrees, Great Falls. You pick it right off like you memorize it. Well, we'd go alongside of that name on the map and just write the number on there ahead of time, But the people at home didn't know that.
Yeah.
So anyway, we had one of the guys who did weather, Jim Larson was his name. Jim was a good guy, but he had some ego. A lot of people who. It was a real snowy night, wet snow coming down, and while Jim's doing the weather. Back in those days, you had to use so much lighting on stuff because cameras weren't near sensitive there. So you couldn't see when you're sitting here doing news, you couldn't see beyond the cameras. It was all black back there. So you could walk back there and nobody here could see it.
Right.
That's the reason I say that, because I opened the window on the ledge, I got a great big gob of wet snow. And I told the camera guy, we had 2 cameras by then. I told one of the camera guys, I said, you got it. Because I'm going to leave for a minute, so hang on. That cameraman has to know he's live. You can't be smoothing. Right. I stood right behind the camera guys, and I waited for Jim to say, and right now in Helena it's snowing, and I let that great big gob of snow, boom, hit him all over the weatherboard, all over his glasses. get a little fun in this TV.
You did that on live television?
Yeah.
Oh my God. How do you react?
He was a little upset, but we had more comment on that. You know, it was perfect. You know.
That's so cool.
And so anyway, so then a guy that had worked radio before was in sales. His name was Blair Morrison. Blair and I got to be pretty good friends. Had a lot of fun together. He had a great sense of humor. He's very creative in his sales work. He comes to me and he says, let's you and I do a morning. This is before local TV or anybody that I know of back in the early 60s was doing anything live early morning. Mm-hmm. Came to me with the idea, he says, let's do a morning breakfast show. He says, I think I can trade out the breakfast with the local Placer Hotel. We'll get a chef to come down and cook, and we'll have guests on and have breakfast at the same time. Breakfast with Bob and Blair. I said, you gotta be nuts. But you know, the more we thought about it, what a great way to get involved with the community and have fun. Yeah. So he goes to the management with that idea, and this same Bruce who got choked to death by my brother-in-law.
Right. That got killed in the controller.
Killing me. I used to imitate this manager, and Bruce, I love you, but I used to imitate him. He's a little humpback guy, and he'd come to me, hi, how's our star today? You say, you know, stuff. So if I didn't do that to the gals in the morning when I walk in, they'd make me go back out and come back in and do my Bruce routine. You know? But anyway, so he goes to that, Bruce, nah, we couldn't. Nah. So Blair came to me, and you know what we did, which radio guys used to do that, we bought our own airtime. We bought an hour of time, 5 days
on
a
TV.
week. Yeah, off the rate card.
Wow.
And then we went out and sold it separately.
Wow.
Ooh. There were some big radio markets where some announcers did that, and late stations about lost it because that morning guy was so popular. Yeah. Yeah, so they had to be very careful. But Blair had that idea. Wow. So we went in, bought time, and they said, well, okay. So we had our own breakfast with Bob and Blair in the mornings.
Gosh.
Yeah.
How long did that last?
You mean time-wise?
Yeah, so how long
were
you...
I guess we did that for about 3 or 4 months, and I don't know, we were doing fine with it.
Yeah.
And I don't remember exactly why, but we just kind of both got tired of it because it was work. You know, we were both pulling our regular shifts too, and then come down. We had to wash our own dishes there at the station in the bathroom. Yeah. Of all things. I mean, It was. Yeah, I don't know why. And then I left then and got out of the business for a while. Became a vacuum cleaner salesman in Seattle, Washington.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
And then I went down. My daughter was just a baby. Then I went down to one of the managers of the vacuum outfit. It was a watertight vacuum called the Rainbow. Yeah. And I got to be a district manager in that. And then one of our guys I worked with, Parents Institute down in San Francisco, hired him to come down and set up their salespeople. I was doing a pretty decent job at it, another guy, so he talked us into going to San Francisco to sell kids' encyclopedias.
Wow.
I went down there. That was the biggest, dumbest move I ever made in my life. Really? Lost my car.
Oh, no.
I had left KSCN 2 years before that, went to hell and everything. Yeah. I lost my car. I just couldn't do it. And it was terrible. In fact, this is a true story. I was going to go to work for a tire shop because I had met a guy that lived in the same apartment. But it was 20 blocks away. I had to walk clear down there. And I'll tell you what, this guy, I think about it as the rest of my life. This guy's like my father. I go in there, and they needed a guy to mount truck tires. Mm-hmm. Well, here I've been in radio and sales. Right. I used to be on the farm, but he looked at me and says, I tell you what, I'm going to do you a big favor. I'm not going to hire you. Thanks a lot. I needed that favor today. I'm broke.
Right. No kidding.
He says, Bob, you can't do this kind of work. You don't want it. He said, why don't you go back to do what you were trained in, what you were in? I'm walking back down, back to the apartment. I thought, why don't I go back in there?
Yeah.
Because Jerry and I had left on kind of a, although we saw each other after that and kind of. So I go back home and tell my wife, I said, how'd you like to go back to Shelby? She says, well, do something. She was awful good, my first wife, bless her heart. Yeah. We didn't fight, we just kind of separated, but anyway, that's another story. She says, we got to do something. I have been to call Jerry Black, clear back at Shelby, Montana, KSCN. I, Mike, did not have enough money to make a phone call.
Wow.
I didn't even have a dime. It cost a dime to call the operator.
Yeah.
I borrowed it from the guy I knew in the apartment. Can you talk about getting down to stupidity? I wouldn't call my folks. I was too proud. Yeah. Didn't want them to know that I'd gotten myself into such a bind. Yeah. My daughter was still, And so I called Black and I called him collect. Collect call from Robert Norris in Oakland, California. Yeah, Jerry says. So I called him up and say, are you looking for an announcer? By gosh, we are, he says. Although he lied, he let a guy go then. I look back at it, but Jerry and I always got along great. And I worked hard when I was there. I'll give him that. Yeah, we are, he says. I says, well, I says, oh, by the way, I don't have any money and I don't have a car. Right. Well, how much is that going to cost? I says, I don't know. So anyway, went and found out, and he wired the money out, and my wife and I and our baby rode the train from Oakland, California back to Shelby. Wow. Didn't have a house, didn't have a car. One of the salesmen from the station met me there at the train. Bob, you're going to stay with us for a while till you find something and whatever. And I'm walking to work, and I, in fact, there was a guy at local newspaper who did an article, a picture of it. My wife keeps a lot of these clippings. And I had a pair of shoes that I worn the sole out because I walked to work every morning. Wasn't that many blocks, but just kiddingly, the way I worked on the air, if something I'd done or did for the day, I'd bring it up, I say, I want to talk to people who live on the north side of Shelby over here by the Bitterroot School. I said, somebody broke some glass on the sidewalk. You got a poor radio announcer that lives on that block, and when I walk there, I get glass in my... So I stopped to have a beer that night or something, or after a message. There's a guy that owns a business there. He slides me, throws 15 cents over. He says, here, go buy yourself a pair of shoes. So that's
he heard you on the radio.
Yeah, he knew me. Yeah, he's sitting in the bar. Here, go buy yourself a pair. I don't know why he only had change laying there, 15 cents.
Right.
So, of course, big mouth me, I got to tell about what happened.
Right.
I'm telling about, I got 15 cents if you not that I did do it to bag it, I did it to have fun.
Right.
But I wouldn't accept more than 25 cents, I think. Yeah. But people were sending me money, and I finally got like $15. And this guy, to this day, I got this Western Breeze. Norris gets his new Brogans, and he's got a picture of me. He came down to Shelby. I had my feet up on the thing. Here's a picture of me with these bottom of my shoes. That's small town radio, USA. Exactly. They were all involved. They were interested in how I was doing on my shoe money. It gave them a reason to talk to you. I found that out. People would come and talk, and if they had a reason, you said something on the air.
That's something.
Yeah, I don't know why I think of these things, but...
well, I'm glad you did. And thank you so much for being on this program. This has been a lot of fun. I did not imagine that it'd be this much fun, but I knew spending time with you would be. I cannot thank you enough for being on the Mike Litton Experience.
Thank you.
Thank you for 42 years of radio service. That is just unbelievable. I know you were honored for 30 years and all that, but you're just an absolute legend, Bob, and you're the nicest guy I've ever met in my life. I mean, I love spending time with you, and I cannot thank you enough for doing this.
I wrote more than that for you to say about me.
I know. See there? And the check's in the mail. I love you, buddy. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.